Hey, I'm Liana and I'm 30. If you told me 2 years ago that my life would flip completely because of a family emergency, I'd have laughed and kept coding. I was living in a cozy loft making good money in UI/UX design and enjoying my freedom. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine, until the phone call. It was my dad. "Sweetheart, can you come over tonight? We need to talk." His voice was tight, shaky even. That wasn't like him. My parents were the rock-solid no-drama type, or so I thought. I showed up that evening and found them at the dining table surrounded by envelopes and bills like a paper tornado had hit. Dad looked worn out like a man 10 years older than the last time I saw him. Mom just stared at her tea. "What's going on?" I asked. Dad sighed. "I had to leave work. My heart's acting up. I can't handle stress anymore." Mom chimed in, "I'm still at the salon part-time, but the bills..." Her voice trailed off. Turns out they were drowning. Dad's heart condition meant no more overtime shifts. The mortgage insurance and debt payments were eating them alive. "We're going to lose the house unless we get help," Dad said, finally looking at me. There it was, the unspoken request. I didn't hesitate. "I'll move back, help however I can." The relief on their faces was immediate. That's how I ended up back in my childhood bedroom, surrounded by old posters and my ancient lava lamp. The first few weeks were rough. I had to give up my place, adapt to weird schedules, and try not to eavesdrop on my parents' quiet arguments about money. But I adjusted. My job was remote. I made enough around $95K with random project bonuses that could spike to $15K a month. I used my salary to cover the mortgage, utilities, groceries, basically kept the house afloat. What I didn't tell them, every bonus I got went into a separate account. Hidden. Off the books. I loved my parents, but I'd seen how my older sister Amy operated. She lived across the city with her husband Tyler and their twins. And she always had a financial crisis, broken dishwasher, daycare fees, you name it. Just a quick $300 lie, Amy would text. "We'll pay you back, promise." Spoiler, they never did. So I stayed quiet. I smiled, paid bills, and saved quietly. In 2 years, I stashed away nearly $200,000. I had plans, big ones. But Sunday dinners ruined everything. Every week, Amy's family invaded. She'd float in like she was royalty, complaining about traffic, her boss, her skin breakout, whatever. Meanwhile, her kids trashed the living room, and Tyler would sneak beers from my dad's stash. Amy never missed a chance to jab at me. "You're still wearing that hoodie, girl. It's like college never ended for you." I'd smile politely and disappear upstairs. "You need to get out more," she'd shout after me, 30 and still single. Come on, every time I bit my tongue. Because peace was cheaper than a fight. But then everything shifted. One weekend I visited a college friend, Maya, in Vermont. Cabin in the woods, fresh air, silence, bliss. I got back late Sunday night expecting quiet. Instead, I found chaos. My stuff, laptop, bag, charger, work folders were dumped in the hallway. Kids were asleep on my bed. Amy's voice echoed from my parents' room. "We'll only need a few months, Liana won't mind." Mind? I pushed open the door. "What is this?" Amy turned all fake sweetness. "Oh, you're back." "We had to move in. Tyler lost his job. The lease ended." My parents looked like kids caught cheating on a test. "So you took over my room?" I asked. "It made the most sense," Amy said with a shrug. "The kids need space. You can work in the basement." The basement. The unfinished cold concrete box with bad Wi-Fi. "I have deadlines, I work from home." Tyler muttered, "You'll adjust, it's not that bad." I wanted to scream, instead I just said, "Fine." But that night I cried in the car. I couldn't even go inside. They'd taken everything, again. The next morning I moved my setup to the basement. It was miserable, cold, noisy, and cramped. Over the next few weeks everything got worse. Tyler never looked for work. Amy acted like she owned the house. My parents tiptoed around like scared roommates. And the kids, they found joy in screaming, breaking things, and turning every object into a projectile. One day I came home from a run to find my second monitor shattered. No apology, just a sticky note. Oops, Ethan thought it was a touchscreen. I lost it. That night I drafted an email, short, simple. "To my boss subject conference I'm in. Yes, I'll take the spot in Toronto. 2 weeks starting Monday." I booked a hotel, I packed light, and I left without a word. No note, no goodbye. I needed space. Clarity. Maybe even a little revenge. Toronto was cold, clean, and quiet. 3 things my life hadn't been in months. For the first time in over a year, I woke up to silence. No yelling, no footsteps, no backhanded comments. Just hotel sheets and blackout curtains. Heaven. The conference was full of other designers and coders like me, people who respected silence, deadlines, and coffee. I even made a few new connections. I talked shop, shared a few laughs, and realized something important: I missed myself. Not the version stuffed into a mold to keep peace, but the version who had her own space, her own money, her own life. I didn't check in with my family once while I was gone. Not a call, not a text. And the funny thing, they didn't either. 2 weeks flew by. On the flight home, I felt weirdly calm. I had a plan now. But first, I had to go back and see what kind of chaos waited. The taxi pulled up to the curb just after dark. I didn't even have to step out to know something was wrong. My things were on the lawn. I'm not exaggerating, actual black trash bags filled with clothes boxes with Liana scribbled in Sharpie, and a cracked picture frame I'd kept since college. I stood frozen. Suitcase in hand, heart pounding. My mind raced. Was this a joke? A prank? Some bizarre misunderstanding? I walked up to the door before I could knock it opened. Mom, Dad, Amy, Tyler, all standing there, all watching me like I was a stranger. No one said anything, so I broke the silence. What's going on? Mom looked away. Dad cleared his throat. But Amy, she smiled. We needed the space. You've been gone for 2 weeks, and honestly, it's not fair to keep the basement empty. I blinked. You kicked me out. Amy shrugged like she was discussing takeout. The kids needed consistency. You disappearing like that? Well, we had to make decisions. Tyler stepped in like he was the voice of reason. You weren't paying rent. Technically, your stuff was just taking up space. I could have laughed if I wasn't so stunned. Rent, I'd been covering the mortgage insurance, groceries, and now I was being told I wasn't pulling my weight. So where am I supposed to go? I asked, my voice too calm for what I felt. The basement. Mom mumbled. We cleaned it up, put in a rug. It's not so bad. Not so bad. That mildew-scented dungeon where I couldn't even get decent Wi-Fi? Amy folded her arms. If you don't like it, maybe it's time you found your own place. You're not a kid anymore. I looked at each of them. Not one looked sorry, not one thanked me. That's when I knew they were never going to see me as anything but disposable. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just nodded. Okay. I walked back to the taxi, pulled out my phone, and made 2 calls. First to the moving company I'd scoped out a month earlier. Then to Dave, my realtor friend, who'd helped me quietly tour condos before Toronto. I already had one in mind. A bright 2-bedroom with big windows and 0 relatives. Is it still available? I asked. If it is, I'm ready to sign today. Dave laughed. Still available. You're approved? Want the keys tomorrow? No. I said, tonight. I booked a hotel for the night and crashed hard. The next morning, I met Dave at the new place. Signed the papers, took the keys. Just like that, I was free. The movers came in the afternoon. I gave them my parents' address and asked them to grab the bags from the lawn. Just the stuff labeled Liana. Leave the rest. They didn't ask questions. Professionals don't. An hour later, I was standing in my new living room, surrounded by boxes, sun streaming through clean windows, breathing air that didn't smell like tension. I set up my desk first, then my bed. Then I ordered sushi and ate it on the floor with a blanket and a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. I didn't call my family to say I'd left. I didn't leave a note. I canceled every payment I'd been making for them. The mortgage, the electricity, the Wi-Fi, all gone. I blocked their numbers, changed my email, unfollowed every one of them. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was blissful. In the weeks after, I worked harder than ever. Without distractions, my focus sharpened. Clients noticed. Projects flowed. Bonuses got bigger. I upgraded my desk, got a real coffee machine, started sleeping through the night. I joined a local gym, signed up for a pottery class, went on 2 dates, neither of which turned into anything serious. But for the first time, I didn't feel like I needed it to. I wasn't escaping anymore, I was rebuilding. Then one night, 2 months later, the doorbell rang. I didn't move at first, just stared at the door like it might disappear. I wasn't expecting anyone. Nobody had this address, at least nobody who should. The bell rang again. I stood slowly, quietly, and peeked through the peephole. My stomach twisted. It was them. All 4 of them. Mom, Dad, Amy, Tyler. I leaned my forehead against the door for a second, thinking maybe if I waited long enough, they'd leave. But they didn't. I opened it halfway, kept the chain on. How did you find me? Mom stepped forward like she expected a hug. We stopped by your work. One of your coworkers said you'd moved here. Of course. I'd forgotten about Rachel at the front desk. She was chatty. Too friendly. My mistake. What do you want? I asked. Amy rolled her eyes. Seriously? Is that how you greet family? You're not family, I said. You're the people who dumped my life on the lawn. Tyler shoved his hands in his pockets, looking around my apartment like he was taking inventory. Nice place. This from your bonus money, or did you finally get a raise? I didn't answer. Didn't owe them anything. Mom looked him up nervous now. Liana, we're having a hard time. The bank's been calling. The mortgage, I canceled all payments, I said. You don't get to ask me for money after what you did. We didn't mean for it to go like that, Dad said, suddenly finding his voice. We just thought maybe you'd moved on. No, I replied. You hoped I would disappear and not come back. Amy pushed past me without asking, walked straight into my living room. Tyler followed. Like it was normal. Like they were welcome. My parents trailed behind. This is really nice, Amy said, running her hand over the back of my couch. Must cost a fortune. Good thing you're finally acting like an adult. I didn't say anything. Just shut the door and locked it behind them. Make it quick, I said. I have work in the morning. They all sat like we were catching up over coffee instead of picking scabs off a wound. Tyler cleared his throat. I lost my job. Again. Of course he did. And Amy's hours got cut, Mom added. We're barely making it. Without your help, we might lose the house. I crossed my arms. And you want what, for me to start paying again? Move back in. Not exactly, Amy said. But if they foreclose, well, we thought maybe we could stay here, just for a while, until we get back on our feet. I almost laughed. You want to live here? Amy nodded like it was a perfectly reasonable request. You have 2 bedrooms. The kids could share. We'd stay out of your way. I didn't answer right away. Just let the silence hang. Tyler squirmed. My mom stared at the floor. My dad pretended to check a crack in the tile. Let me get this straight, I finally said. You threw me out of the house I was paying for, told me to live in a basement like some intern, and now that you're broke again, you want to move into the life I built without you? It's not like that, Mom said softly. It's exactly like that, I replied. You didn't just push me out. You made it clear I wasn't wanted. Not as a daughter, not as a person, just as a wallet. Amy stood, her voice rising. We were under stress. You blindsided us, leaving like that without telling anyone. What did you expect? Respect, I said. Gratitude. Maybe even a thank you. We said thank you, Dad insisted. No, I said, shaking my head. You said nothing. You watched as they took my room, my space, my peace. And when I protested, you acted like I was the problem. Tyler finally spoke again. Look, we're sorry. Things got messy. But we're here now trying to fix it. You're not trying to fix anything, I said. You're trying to survive. And you think I'm still your safety net. You are family, Mom said, eyes starting to water. And family helps each other. I looked at her and felt nothing. No warmth, no guilt, just clarity. You're right, I said. Family does help. But that's not what this is. This is need, desperation. You didn't come because you missed me. You came because the bills showed up. Amy's face twisted. God, you're so selfish. All this money, all this space, and you can't even help your own blood, I smiled then. Not cruelly, just quietly. No, I can't, not anymore. Mom looked like she was about to cry. Dad's jaw tightened. Amy opened her mouth again, but I cut her off. You made your choice the day you threw my life on the lawn. I made mine when I walked away. That door swings one way now. I stood and opened it. Please leave. No one moved, so I repeated it. Calm, clear, leave. One by one, they filed out. Amy muttered something under her breath. Tyler avoided eye contact. Dad looked like he wanted to say something but didn't. Mom paused in the doorway. You'll regret this, she whispered. No, I said. I won't. I closed the door, locked it, then stood there listening to my own heartbeat. For the first time, it was steady. After they left, I didn't move. I stood there in the quiet, hand still on the door handle, listening for their footsteps to fade. The silence felt dense, like something acrid had just settled in the room. Not the kind of quiet that follows an argument, but the kind that comes after a final decision. The kind that says it's done now. I didn't feel powerful. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt settled. Like I'd finally stopped trying to balance on a line someone else kept shifting. That night, I didn't sleep much. I wasn't crying or overthinking, I just needed to feel the moment, to sit with it. I lit a candle, made tea, and curled up on the couch in my oversized hoodie, staring at nothing. It didn't feel like loss. It felt like something heavy had been lifted off my chest. like I could finally take a deep breath without worrying who was about to need something from me. The days that followed were quiet but not empty. No more surprise calls, no last-minute money requests, no guilt texts pretending to be concerned. It was strange at first waking up and knowing there'd be no drama waiting in my inbox. I started my mornings with silence and coffee, took deep, unhurried breaths, worked without background noise. My productivity shot through the roof. Clients noticed. One even asked if I'd brought in outside help. No, I told him. Just finally had some space to think. That wasn't a metaphor. A few weeks later, I heard from a mutual acquaintance, my cousin Nora. She texted out of the blue, "Hey, just FYI, I heard the house went into pre-foreclosure. Thought you'd want to know." I stared at the message for a while, not because I was surprised, but because I didn't feel what I thought I would. No guilt, no urge to fix it, just clarity. It was never mine to save. I typed back, "Thanks. Hope they figure it out," and left it at that. I didn't ask where they were going, what they were doing, or who they were blaming, because I already knew. I started investing more in myself. Not just financially, though. I was saving more than ever, but emotionally, too. I signed up for a photography class, took a weekend trip alone to Montreal. Bought plants and didn't kill them. Said yes to a second date with someone who actually listened when I spoke. His name was Caleb. He was a travel writer with quiet confidence and a sense of humor that didn't try too hard. Our first real conversation happened over Thai food when he asked, "What's the one thing you stopped doing for other people that made your life better?" I didn't even hesitate. Saying yes when I meant no, I said. He smiled like he got it. I think he did. Meanwhile, my family kept trying to reach me. Not directly, they were all blocked, but I saw the patterns. New emails from unfamiliar addresses, voicemails from numbers I didn't recognize, messages through old friends who hadn't talked to me in years. Most of them started the same way. "Hey, I know this is random, but Amy asked if I could pass something along." I didn't reply to a single one. Not because I was being petty, but because I meant what I said. That door didn't swing both ways anymore. One day I ran into Sandra, a neighbor from my parents' street. She looked surprised to see me. "Liana, wow, you look different. Happier?" "I am," I said. She glanced around like she wanted to say more. "They're living in a small rental now, across town. Haven't seen them much. Amy's kids switched schools." I nodded. "Hope they're okay." She looked confused. "That's it, I said. "That's it. I meant it. I didn't wish them harm, I just didn't owe them my peace anymore." Caleb and I kept seeing each other. He asked questions no one had ever asked me before. He didn't rush my answers. He didn't try to fix anything. He just listened, which felt revolutionary. One night, we sat on my balcony watching the city lights, and he said, "You know, you talk about your past like you're done living it." I laughed. "I am. For the first time, I really am." He reached for my hand and didn't say anything. He didn't need to. My work life kept thriving too. I got promoted to lead designer for a project I'd been quietly dreaming about for years. I led a team, set the pace, and created something I was proud of. No more apologizing for my ambition. No more pretending I wasn't ready. I was more than ready. I'd just been held back by people who never saw me as more than what I gave them. Months passed. Seasons changed. The peace in my life became a rhythm I didn't even question anymore. I started hosting dinners, laughing without checking if someone was judging, living like I wasn't walking on eggshells. I took up boxing not because I was angry, but because hitting things in a controlled environment felt like power I didn't know I needed. I also started volunteering at a women's shelter on Sundays, teaching basic budgeting and resume building, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Giving felt good again, because this time it was on my terms. Then one morning I woke up to a message on LinkedIn. It was from Marcus, a guy Amy used to date back in high school. We hadn't spoken in years. His message was short. "Hey, thought you should know your sister's been telling people you stole money from the family, that you abandoned them in their time of need." I laughed out loud. Of course she was, playing the victim card like it came with free refills. I didn't reply, didn't need to. Anyone who believed that story never really knew me anyway. I closed my laptop and looked around my apartment at the art I'd chosen. The shelves I'd built, the plants thriving in every corner. This life was mine. Every inch of it. Built without apology, sustained by boundaries, protected by the version of me who finally learned to stop setting herself on fire to keep others warm. And I wasn't going back. It was almost a year to the day since I'd left when it happened. A knock on my door. Not the buzzer, not a delivery, not a neighbor's mistake. A real knock, the kind that carries weight behind it. I wasn't expecting anyone. I peeked through a peephole. It was Dad, alone. No Amy, no Mom, no kids in the hallway. Just him standing there, hands in his pockets, shoulders slightly hunched, like he wasn't sure if he should have come at all. For a second I thought about not answering, just walking away like they had when I stood in the rain outside their house. But then I opened the door, not wide, just enough. "Hi," he said. He looked older, a lot older, like someone had let the years catch up to him all at once. "Can I come in?" I hesitated, not out of anger, but because I wasn't sure if I wanted this piece cracked open. Still I nodded. He stepped inside slowly, glancing around like every detail of my apartment reminded him of what he'd lost. I didn't offer him a seat. He didn't ask for one. "I won't stay long," he said, standing near the bookshelf. I needed to say some things. You don't have to answer. I just need to say them." I stayed silent, leaning against the kitchen counter. He took a breath. "We were wrong about a lot of things. About how we treated you. About how we let Amy control the story. About how we ignored what you were doing for all of us. I didn't see it at the time. I thought we were surviving, but we were using you. That's the truth." His voice cracked a little, but he kept going. "You gave everything, and when you needed space, instead of thanking you, we punished you. I let that happen." I stood there and said nothing. And for that, I'm sorry. I watched him, this man who'd once taught me how to ride a bike, change a tire, paint my first wall. Now he looked like he was waiting to be told whether he still mattered. I didn't speak right away. I wanted the words to be right. Not rehearsed, not angry, just real. "Why now?" I finally asked. He nodded slowly. "We lost the house, moved into a rental. Things have been tense. Amy hasn't spoken to us in months. She blames everyone. Says we let you destroy the family. Your mother's not well. And I guess seeing it all fall apart made me realize it wasn't you who walked away from us. It was us who pushed you out." I looked at him, really looked, and saw a man who wasn't here to make excuses. Just a father trying to understand the daughter he'd lost. "I don't hate you," I said. I never did. But I had to choose myself, and that meant letting go of people who kept asking for pieces of me while offering nothing back. He nodded again, slower this time. "I get it. Too late, but I get it. It's not about late," I said. "It's about truth and owning it." He swallowed hard. "Would it be all right if, sometime, your mother and I came to dinner? No expectations. Just a meal." I didn't answer right away. Not because I didn't want to, but because I needed to know what I wanted that to mean. Eventually I said, "We'll see. One meal, one honest conversation. That's all I can promise." He nodded like that was more than he'd hoped for. That's fair. He turned to go, then paused at the door. "You built something incredible, Lee. I wish I'd seen it sooner." I opened the door for him. "So do I. But thank you." When the door closed behind him, I didn't feel shaken. I felt rooted, like I'd stayed standing in a storm and now, finally, the wind was easing. That night, I sat on my balcony with Caleb. I told him everything. He didn't interrupt, didn't analyze, just held my hand quietly. When I finished, he asked one question. "Do you feel like you got closure?" I thought about it. "I don't know if closure is a door that shuts," I said. "Maybe it's just the moment you realize you're no longer the one reaching back." A few days later, a card came in the mail. No return address, just my name in shaky handwriting. I opened it slowly. Inside was a simple note. "We are sorry. Not because of what we lost, but because we never saw what we had. Thank you for surviving us. Mom." I stared at those words longer than I expected. Not because they fixed anything, but because they acknowledged it. And sometimes that's enough to soften the hardest edges. Life didn't change dramatically after that. I didn't rush to invite anyone back in. I didn't open all the doors just because one person knocked. But I did allow myself to heal, to breathe deeper, to let love in carefully, quietly. I still had boundaries, and they weren't fences anymore, they were invitations. Earned, not assumed. Caleb moved in 6 months later. Not because I needed him, but because I wanted him. We shared space, but never control. We built routines, not roles. On Sunday mornings, we made pancakes. On Tuesday nights, we played cards. And when I worked late, he brought me tea without asking why. It wasn't perfect, but it was peaceful. And peace, I realized, wasn't the absence of noise. It was knowing I had the power to protect my space, my energy, and my joy without apology. A year passed. Then another. The distance between who I used to be and who I'd become wasn't measured in miles or days. It was measured in peace. Real peace. The kind that settles in your bones and doesn't need an audience. I didn't talk about my family much anymore, not because I was avoiding it, but because I didn't carry it around like a wound. It became background noise, a story I could pull off the shelf if someone asked, but not one I kept reading to myself. Caleb and I had carved out a life that felt like ours. Not borrowed, not tolerated. Ours. There were quiet mornings with sunlight spilling across the kitchen tiles, laughter over burnt toast, and late-night talks that didn't try to solve anything, just listened. He never tried to fix me, never treated my past like a puzzle. He just held space for it, and that was enough. Sometimes healing looks like being able to sit in your own living room without wondering who's going to need you next. I didn't forget what happened. I didn't forgive all of it either. Forgiveness for me wasn't about absolving someone else. It was about releasing the grip their choices had on my body, my time, my mind. I forgave what I needed to in order to sleep through the night without bitterness curling around my ribs. But I also remembered, because remembering is how I kept my boundaries strong. I didn't want revenge. I didn't need anyone to fall apart. I just needed them to stay away from what I'd built. And mostly they did. My parents never came to dinner. They never followed up on that meal. I think deep down they knew it wasn't time. Maybe it never would be. I was okay with that. I didn't need reconciliation to prove I'd grown. Sometimes closure isn't a conversation, it's a decision to stop bleeding for people who keep holding the knife. Amy tried once more. About 2 years after everything, she sent a handwritten letter. No return address, just a few pages folded neatly inside a plain envelope. She said she was sorry, that she'd been overwhelmed, entitled, blind to what she'd asked of me. She wrote about losing her job, her husband filing for separation, the house gone, the kids confused. She asked if we could start over. Just talk, not as sisters, but as people trying to be better. I read it twice, sat with it, then tucked it in a drawer I didn't open often. Not because I didn't believe she meant it, but because not every apology needs a reply. Sometimes growth means leaving the door unlocked, but still choosing not to open it. I never wrote back. My life was full in ways I hadn't imagined possible before I left that house. I was no longer the family's fixer, the quiet daughter who paid bills with a smile while being called ungrateful. I was no longer the buffer between chaos and collapse. I was Liana, a designer, a partner, a woman who knew exactly how it felt to be erased and who rewrote her story with her own hands. One day I stood in front of the mirror, brushing my hair before heading to a work presentation, and caught a glimpse of myself really saw me. Not the tired version that used to fake patience for survival, but a version with steady eyes and a calm that couldn't be shaken by a ringing phone or a surprise knock at the door. I smiled not because everything was perfect, but because it was finally mine. People like to say blood is thicker than water. That family comes first. But I've learned that family isn't always who shares your last name. Sometimes it's who shows up when you're quiet, who respects your boundaries without making you explain them, who says I see you and means it not because of what you provide, but because of who you are. I still light a candle some nights, sit on the balcony, listen to the city hum, and I think about the girl who once stood on a lawn surrounded by trash bags, wondering how she'd ever start over. I think about the basement they offered her, the silence they left her in, the smile she forced when they stopped seeing her. And then I think of everything that came after: keys in her hand, her name on a lease, the sound of her own laughter in a space she chose. That girl didn't just survive, she became someone new. Stronger, softer, sharper. So if you ask me now, was it worth it? Walking away, letting go, standing firm. The answer is yes. Every quiet step, every firm no, every time I chose myself over comfort or chaos, it was worth it. Because I am no longer the version of me who asks for permission to be okay. I don't beg to be heard. I don't argue to be understood. I simply exist peacefully, powerfully, and on purpose. And for the first time in my life, that's enough. Story 2, we relocated. Hello, my name is Sarah. I'm going to read you Anna's narrative today, which goes by this title. You won't be joining us on our trip according to my stepmother. For a genuine family, that is. However, they desired a vacation at my lake cottage without me. When they arrived, I changed the locks because I arrived early. I won't let strangers into my house, I said. Okay, come on. 10 days. I was so excited that I was virtually jumping off the walls. That was all I had left until my vacation. I'm 26-year-old Anna, and I've been anticipating this vacation for months. The lovely lake cottage I received from my great-aunt 2 years ago would finally allow me to spend time with my family. The home is located directly on the lake, roughly 6 hours away from my residence. It is beautiful. You may forget about the stress of the city and work deadlines there. Back when things were easier, my parents and I spent several summers there as a child. In the days when Mom lived, when I was 16, my mother passed away. Dad was devastated when she succumbed to cancer quickly. For a year, we both were. We were the only ones attempting to adapt to life without her. At work, Dad then ran into Rebecca. She appeared to be a decent person, a widow with 2 children, Sarah and Jessica, who were both enrolled in college at the time. It was strange from the beginning because they were older than I was. Rebecca and her daughters moved into our home after Dad got married again. I made an effort to be friendly. Yes, I did. There was never any genuine warmth between us, even though we were courteous and had regular discussions. We all seemed to be acting like a family and just playing house. Seeing Dad change was the most painful thing. He began going to Rebecca's and her girls' events and spending more time with them. I had the impression that I was becoming less significant in my own life. There was a part of me that was glad of the opportunity to move to a different state for college. I didn't come home often when I was at college. I felt like a visitor in my own home when I did. My presence felt out of place because Rebecca had redecorated everything and placed pictures of her girls everywhere. Not in a clear manner. Although she was always courteous, she occasionally made small remarks. "You're back at home, Anna? Or perhaps you were unexpected this weekend." I felt like I was intruding on little things. I temporarily returned home after graduation in order to save money for an apartment. It was agony for those few months. Without my father noticing, Rebecca had mastered the skill of making me feel unwelcome. There were 5 of us, and she would prepare dinner for 4, then pretend to be shocked when I bring it up. She forgot to tell me about the family activities she had planned. Dad didn't appear to notice, or if he did. He remained silent. When I eventually saved up enough money to rent a place of my own, I was ecstatic. I felt like I could breathe again after moving out. I became closer to Greta at that point. Margaret, Mom is not here. I began going to see her frequently, delivering groceries and offering her company as she lived alone in that large lake mansion. She had the finest stories and the sharpest wit, but she was in her 80s and not doing well. Those trips ended up being the high point of my months. I personally planned Margaret's funeral when she passed away at the age of 92. Naturally, Dad and Rebecca arrived, but this morning they seemed more interested in talking about the house. Margaret had left me everything when the lawyer called a week later. The house and a good deal of money. I ought to sell it. During supper, I told my father that I could purchase a home nearer to my workplace. "Don't hurry." Before Dad could answer, Rebecca jumped in. "That land is a treasure trove. The value of lake homes only increases. We could all go family trips with it too." Dad gave a nod. "Anna, your stepmother is correct. It's a wise purchase. For now, keep it." So I did. I assumed they might occasionally utilize the extra key I gave them. The fact that they treated it like their own vacation house surprised me. They wouldn't beg to go up there. Occasionally bringing Sarah and Jessica. At first I didn't mind. They cleaned up after themselves and I didn't use it much because I was too busy working. In any case, the event that altered everything, however, occurred next. I drove up to the lake house for some alone time after taking a few days off from work. I heard laughter and music coming from the back deck as soon as I stepped through the front door. 6 of Jessica's friends were present. There are drinks everywhere, behaving as though she was the owner. "Why are you here?" When Jessica spotted me, she inquired, as if I weren't the one who belonged. "This is where I reside," I said, perplexed by her demeanor. "I live here." "Well," she said, "we're throwing a party." "You're somewhat destroying the atmosphere." What I was hearing was unbelievable. "Please pardon me, Jessica. This is my home. Who is welcome here is up to me." The tension was there from the start. Jessica scowled at me as if I had personally offended her, and her pals were uneasy. After that, the party disbanded really rapidly. Who evening, the majority of her friends departed, and Jessica and the few who remained departed the following morning, without even bidding farewell. My phone rang that evening. "Rebecca, Anna, how could you treat Jessica and her friends so badly? All she wanted was to enjoy herself." "It's my house, Rebecca. I was completely unaware of their presence. In front of her friends, you made her feel ashamed. You had the opportunity to be more forgiving, more comprehension." She accused me of spoiling their celebration at my own home. Click. Rebecca ended the call, then the temperature dropped even farther. Dad called less frequently and appeared aloof when he did. I assumed that was the way it would be moving forward. That is why I was so taken aback when my father contacted me 3 weeks ago. Would you be able to join us for supper today, Anna, honey? Rebecca and I would like to discuss something with you. I nearly dropped the phone. It has been months since we last chatted. Not since all that happened with Jessica. That night, I was both anxious and optimistic as I traveled to their home. Perhaps they had finally come to terms with the way they had treated me. Perhaps Rebecca had realized her mistake. Dad grinned broadly as he answered the door and gave me a hug. You look fantastic, Anna. Enter, enter. When I walked into the living room, Rebecca got up. Hi, Anna. I appreciate you coming. She appeared to be different. It's not chilly, but it's also not warm. It seemed more like she was attempting to be nice. So, what were you hoping to discuss? I sat down in the armchair across from them and inquired. After exchanging glances with Rebecca, Dad leaned forward. We've been thinking about how much we miss our family time. We want to address the tension that has been there lately. Rebecca continued, We were hoping that maybe we could all take a vacation to your lake house. We all together. May Sarah, Jessica, your father, and their fiancés be blessed. And you, naturally. I gave their fiancés a blink. Yes, indeed, Rebecca smiled. This year, both girls became engaged, Sarah to David and Jessica to Mark. Sweet boys. They will appeal to you. I experienced a strange range of feelings. I was truly thrilled about the prospect of the trip, but I was also disappointed that I hadn't been informed about the engagement. Actually, that sounds extremely pleasant. When did you think next month? We could take 10 days, Dad replied. Unwind and reestablish your connection, I said. I'd love that. I meant it too. I missed having a family in spite of everything. What is the total number of people? 7? Rebecca used her fingers to count. All 6 of us, plus you. I nodded, already planning in my head to clean the house and buy groceries for that large gathering. I prepared for the following 2.5 weeks. I drove up to the lake house and thoroughly cleaned everything over the course of a weekend. I vacuumed every room, cleaned the bathrooms, and washed all the bedding. I created lists of the materials and food we would require for 10 days for 7 people. I purchased everything I could possibly need, including groceries, toiletries, sunscreen, and bug repellent. I also purchased some floating toys for the lake and new patio furniture for the deck. I desired perfection in everything. 3 days before our scheduled departure, I was virtually giddy with anticipation. I had taken a leave of absence, prepared my belongings, and made sure everything was in order. Dad called again at that point. Would you be able to visit tonight, Anna? I need to talk to you about something regarding the vacation with Rebecca. Yes, was there something I overlooked? I believe I have everything covered, but please come over if you need me to pick up anything else. When you come here, we'll discuss. I drove over to see if they might like to help with the planning or donate some cash for groceries. I was very innocent. Dad greeted me at the door once more, but he was unable to look me in the eye. Enter Anna. This time, Rebecca remained seated on the couch and did not get up. 3 weeks earlier, her expression was entirely different, more difficult. It was more like the Rebecca I knew. Take a seat. I said, she said. Even though I was sitting in the same armchair as previously, I had a strange feeling. Despite sitting beside Rebecca, Dad continued to fidget with his hands. I was therefore considering our first night's dinner. I began to take out my notebook. Dad and Anna, I thought maybe I could prepare the salmon dish you used to enjoy. Rebecca cut me off. We must discuss the vacation. All right, I replied, still grinning. How about it? Rebecca inhaled deeply. We have made the decision that you will not accompany us. I assumed she was kidding, so I walked away. What are you saying? That's exactly what I mean. This vacation is not for you. My smile vanished from my face. I don't get it. It's my home. Yes, but this is a family-only vacation. Actual family. She seemed to have slapped me. Actual family. Dad refused to look at me, instead focusing on his hands. Rebecca. Slowly, I said. I received your invitation 3 weeks ago. I was invited by both of you. We had a change of heart. She shrugged. Spending time with my daughters and their new fiancés will be the main goal of this trip. It's crucial. Spending time with your family would be awkward, to be honest. Make it awkward, I said again. It's my home. The key is with us, Rebecca said plainly. When we're done constructing the house, you can utilize it. I looked at my father. Are you really comfortable with this? When he looked up at last, he appeared extremely guilty. Perhaps it would be better if I did, Anna. What's better? Dad, if I allow you to evict me from my own home. Rebecca remarked, "You're being dramatic. You won't get kicked out of anything. All we're suggesting is that only close family should go on this specific vacation. Thus, I am not a close relative." Rebecca just shrugged again, but Dad winced. "I didn't say it, you did." I sat there for a while trying to take in the situation. 3 weeks of preparation, anticipation, and hope that we could mend our relationship. It's all for naught. Silently, I said, "Let me clarify. I cleaned my house and bought food for a family trip. But I'm not invited because I'm not actually family, so you want me to let you use it." Rebecca remarked, "Now you're getting it," with what I think was a smirk on her face. I took another look at Dad. "And this is acceptable to you?" His mouth opened, but nothing came out. That was sufficient response. I got up, picked up my handbag, and made my way to the door. "Have fun on your trip." "Hold on, Anna." I was outside when Dad called after me. My voice was followed by Rebecca's. "Don't make everything so theatrical." I was trembling with anger as I drove home. That night, I sat in my apartment pacing like an animal in a cage. Anger literally made my hands shake. Dare they Rebecca's behavior as if I were a stranger is outrageous. They had a favor to do. And Dad, Dad simply sat there and let everything to happen, acting like a coward. My anger increased as I gave it more thought. They said I wasn't family enough to join them, but they still wanted to use my house, eat my food, and sleep in my beds. I was enraged by its blatant conceit. This was not something I was going to overlook. Absolutely not. The following day was spent contemplating my options. I knew that calling my dad and screaming at him would not help, but I still wanted to do it. He had shown that he wouldn't defend me, and Rebecca had him completely enamored. Then I thought of something better. A far superior concept. I choose to hold off. Let them believe they had triumphed. Permit them to prepare and build anticipation for their family-only getaway. And then I would surprise them just as they were about to waltz inside my house. They would always remember. I was browsing Facebook the following evening when I came across a post from Jessica that left me speechless. She wrote that she was looking forward to our family trip next week and was thrilled to be spending time with the people who mattered most without any extra stress or unwanted visitors. Some folks simply aren't aware that they aren't desired. Even worse were the remarks. Only Rebecca and I liked what Sarah had finally written. Dad had enjoyed it as well. It was sealed by that post. They desired to engage in gaming. All right, I could play games until I contacted my pal Lisa right away because she's always game. Do you recall the lake cottage I mentioned to you, Lisa? Do you want to take a free vacation up there with me next week? Yes, indeed. What's the deal? No feline. Actually, I will take care of my family, but there may be some drama. Now I'm even more intrigued. What's happening? By the time I finished telling her the entire tale, she was just as angry as I was. She said, "Those bastards. If you want additional people, I'll bring Mark and Jenny, so count me in." I said the more the better. When they arrive, I want that house to be packed. I contacted pals throughout the course of the following few days. 6 persons had confirmed by the end of the week: Lisa, Mark, Jenny, Tom, Sarah, Mike, and another Sarah. They were all thrilled about a complimentary lake vacation and very supportive of me deceiving my terrible family. I drove up to the lake cottage the day before my family was due to arrive. The previous week, I had already scheduled an afternoon appointment with a locksmith. He changed all the locks in 2 hours. After giving him payment, I received my brand new gleaming keys. After that, I went inside and prepared a delicious dinner for myself. I sat on the deck and watched the sunset over the lake while I opened a bottle of wine. It was going to be an interesting day. That night, I hardly slept at all. My mind continued speculating about several possible outcomes. Would they be upset, bewildered? Would Dad have the courage to confront Rebecca at last? Most likely not. A girl may hope, nevertheless. The following day at about noon, I heard vehicles entering the driveway. My heart began to race. I went upstairs and looked through the curtains at the bedroom facing the front of the house. Dad and Rebecca were in his vehicle. Mark and Jessica in a red Honda. In a blue SUV are Sarah and David. They were obviously in a wonderful mood because they were all laughing and chatting. Rebecca was presumably indicating to them where everyone would sleep by pointing to the house. As they gathered their luggage and made their way to the front door, I watched. Pulling out the key, Rebecca delved for her purse. The girls had their arms stuffed with bags and Dad was toting a cooler. Rebecca turned the lock after inserting the key. Nothing. She made another attempt pushing on the door and jiggling it. Nothing has changed. I saw her talking to her father, who put the cooler down and gave the key a try. They tried the back door after that. The same outcome. I witnessed the precise moment when it hit them. In roughly 2 seconds, Rebecca's expression changed from bewildered to enraged. She began to beat on the front door. I took my time and went gently downstairs. The hammering increased in volume. "Now, Anna, open this door." Rebecca was yelling. I opened the door and peered through the opening, leaving the chain in place. "Hello," I said pleasantly. "Am I able to assist you?" Rebecca's cheeks were flushed. "How have you altered the locks? Our key isn't functional." "Oh," I answered nonchalantly. "That's because I changed them." "My hair looks like this now. That is not possible." From behind, Jessica let out a scream. "Rebecca, we are planning a trip." "It's funny," I said, maintaining my serene, kind voice. "You assured me last week that this trip was exclusively for actual family members. I also reasoned that I shouldn't invite outsiders into my home because I'm reportedly not family." Rebecca sounded like she was suffocating. Dad finally spoke out and said, "You can't be serious." "We came here after 6 hours of driving Anna," I said. "That sounds like a you problem." "This is absurd," Sarah shouted. "Where is your family?" "Are you?" Rebecca made it very apparent last week that I'm not a member of your actual family, so I inquired. "So why would I give my home to strangers?" Rebecca was struggling to find the right words. You can't. I stated that I could do this. It's my home. The deed has my name on it, my choice. Who is allowed to use it?" "This vacation has already been paid for," Mark said. "We took a break from our jobs. Desperately, Dad said we purchased a new car for the trip." I said, "We don't have enough money for a hotel again." "Sounds like a problem with you." At last, Rebecca was able to speak up. "You're acting vindictively and selfishly. Your family is us." I spoke aggressively. "You've made it quite apparent that I'm not related to you." "Rebecca, you can't have it both ways." Rebecca jumped in front of me as I was about to shut the door. "This is not possible. By now you're spoiling our whole holiday," I said, and firmly closed the door. They remained outside for 10 more minutes, shouting and hammering. Rebecca was sobbing because she felt that I had destroyed everything. I was being called names by Jessica. I will not do that again. Dad was always begging me to be sensible. At last I heard their vehicle start up and leave. I called Lisa right away. "The coast is clear." "Hurry up. Are you serious?" "You did it, in fact." "Yes, I did. And it was wonderful. My 6 buddies had all arrived by evening, and we were having a great time. We spent the night drinking and laughing, swimming in the lake, and grilling hamburgers on the deck. I had the nicest vacation in a long time. The following week was flawless. Every day my buddies and I would spend time at the lake, swimming, boating, fishing, and generally having a good time. I felt more at ease than I had in a long time, and we played cards until late and had barbecues on the deck every night. Family was supposed to feel like this, people who didn't make you feel like you had to tread carefully, who genuinely wanted to be around you, and who delighted in your presence. Lisa insisted that the trip was the nicest she had ever taken. "Your family is a bunch of fools for not enjoying this sight." "I don't appreciate you," she murmured, pointing to the lake on our last night together. Instead of the initial 10 days, I ended up staying at the house for 2 whole weeks. To be honest, I didn't want to go, and I had saved up the vacation time. Seeing it again made me realize how much I loved the place and how foolish I had been to let my family use it whenever they wanted, even though I hardly ever used it myself. I felt like a totally different person when I eventually took the car back to the city. More powerful. In some way, I am more confident. When I arrived home, a letter was waiting in my mailbox. When I saw Rebecca's handwriting on the envelope, my heart fell. It was just what I had anticipated when I opened it. She wrote to me for 3 pages about how harsh and self-centered I was, how I had destroyed their entire holiday, and how disgusted she was in me. The true kicker was the last paragraph. "I expect you to say you're sorry for acting like such a child. Until you do, we're not going to talk to you. You are no longer a member of this family." In fact, I burst out laughing. Taken away from the family, as if that constituted a threat. I took a seat at my computer and typed a brief email. "Rebecca, I have nothing to apologize for. In any case, I don't want to talk to any of you anymore. Enjoy your life." After sending it, I banned all of their phone numbers right away. Dad, Rebecca, Jessica, Sarah, everyone. Over the next few days, they attempted to phone from other numbers, but as soon as I recognized their voices, I hung up. I even hung up on Rebecca's buddy when she called. I had finished my gaming. After a month or so, my father was waiting by my car as I was leaving work. He appeared aged and exhausted. In some way, Can we have a conversation, Anna? I nearly continued walking, but his words stopped me. Dad, what do you want? Please, may we have coffee? We visited the small cafe across from the building where I work. Dad didn't touch the coffee he ordered. I waited for him to speak while I got some tea. Finally, he apologized. Anna, I'm so sorry. I allowed Rebecca to push you away because I was weak, and for the rest of my life I will regret it. Why now? I inquired. What was different? He used his hands to rub his face. The entire trip was a complete flop. The whole time, Rebecca and the girl were griping about you and how you had destroyed everything. They made sure I was miserable because they were miserable, and I kept reflecting on how foolish it was of us to treat you in that manner. Rebecca told you to come find me, but you couldn't stop thinking about it. Dad flinched. She is unaware of my presence. She's still mad at you. However, I can no longer live this way. Anna, my daughter is missed. You picked them instead of me. Silently, repeatedly, I said, I understand, and I'm requesting that you give me an opportunity to correct the situation. A part of me wanted to forgive him right then, but I wasn't prepared for that, so I started my tea. There had been too much. Finally, I said I need time. I haven't forgiven you yet. Dad, you truly harmed me. I was betrayed by you. I get it, he said. Take as much time as you require. Furthermore, Rebecca and her daughters are not my concern. It will be simply the two of us if you want a relationship with me. I've had enough of them. Rebecca acknowledged that she was too severe with you. What Rebecca says is irrelevant to me. I cut you off. I no longer want her in my life since I don't believe her. Dad nodded but had a sad expression. All right, only us. Then I suggested perhaps we should get together for coffee sometime. Land that is neutral. Check it out. That would be nice. After we completed our coffee, I gave my dad a hug in return when he said goodbye. The situation had changed. Anger and hurt were still present. However, it was a beginning. I came to a realization while I was driving home. Without all the familial drama, I felt lighter. Rebecca's passive-aggressive remarks and having to be cautious around my father's new family were not concerns for me. I could just be myself. That evening, I gave my friend Carmen a realtor a call. You mentioned that you could assist me in finding a store to buy from. Naturally. Are you prepared to begin searching, indeed? I also have a question. Is my lake cottage available for rent like to rent a vacation home? Of course, at the moment, lake properties are very popular. It's likely that you may make a lot of money for it, particularly during the summer. Excellent. Please provide me the necessary documents. I hung up, eager to see what lay ahead. In months for the first time, instead of allowing my family to utilize the lake house as their own vacation home, I was planning to convert it into an income property and purchase a residence in the city that was entirely mine. I began looking at tiny homes and condos throughout the course of the following few weeks. Even though we were still uneasy, our relationship was improving when I went out to coffee with my dad twice. At least he was making an effort, and that was significant. 3 families expressed interest in renting the lake house for the summer, according to Carmen. Regardless of where I purchased, the money would more than cover my mortgage payments. I was browsing through real estate listings on my laptop one evening. I became aware of my true happiness. I liked my job, I had nice friends, and soon I would have a place of my own. To have a good life, I didn't need Rebecca's acceptance or my father's approval. Lisa texted me that she missed the lake house and my phone chimed. When are we able to return? I typed back with a smile. It's mine whenever you want. Do you recall? And I felt like I truly understood what it meant for the first time since my mother passed away. Mine. My life, my home, my decisions. Nobody else had the authority to determine my worth or place in the world. At last, I had the freedom to create the life I truly desired. And it was wonderful. Story 3U. Hello, my name is Sarah. I'm going to read you Claire's narrative today, which goes by this title. My stepdad dumped my belongings in the garage and transferred his daughter and her family into my apartment in secret. He gave a shrug. You don't deserve this apartment as much as she does. I did it because to make things worse, Mom took their side. All right, let's leave. I'm 25-year-old Claire Wilson, and I've been living in a small staff apartment on the other side of the coast since I traded in the streets of my hometown for a short-term assignment that would help further my career. The flat is sterile but functional. There is nothing like the comfortable 3-bedroom home I inherited from my father. A year after I graduated from college, Dad passed away in a plane tragedy. I was struck down by the news. He texted me about his work trip one minute, and then the news showed his name on a passenger list. He left me enough cash in his apartment to provide me with security. After my parents split when I was 13, Dad was constantly concerned about providing for it. The divorce was sad, but not messy. Mom and I remained in our family home while Dad went into his own apartment. For 2 years, we found a new routine when I went to see my dad on the weekends. Then Richard and Mom met. Richard wasn't bad. He simply occupied the place that was once ours. Mom remarried 2 years after the divorce, and Richard moved in a year later when I was 16. Ethan, my half-brother, is their son. Could you keep an eye on Ethan while we're out? Claire, Mom used to say tonight to me the most. No, how was school? How do you feel? Only things pertaining to her new family. Then there was Jessica, who was 10 years older than me and Richard's daughter from his first marriage. She already had a spouse and a child when our parents gathered. She and her husband Mark and their child visited often. Mom discovered them as if they were kings and queens. The first time I became aware that I had become an afterthought in my own home, I was 17. Jessica was spending Christmas with her relatives. Without asking, Mom moved my belongings into the smaller office area and turned my bedroom into a guest room for them. For the holidays only, Mom said, avoiding eye contact. The room for the baby's cot is necessary for Jessica. I just nodded and remained silent, but when I turned 18 and started college, something changed inside of me. Dad, not Mom and Richard, paid for it. Except on Mom's birthday, I didn't spend much time at home. During breaks, Dad's flat became my actual home. And after my father passed away, his mother, my Grandma Evelyn, became my pillar of support. My relationship with Grandma deepened. I made the permanent move to my dad's apartment and made an effort to mend my connection with my mother by going to see her occasionally and getting to know Ethan, who was developing into an inquisitive and active youngster. When Jessica and her expanding family, now consisting of 2 kids, visited and remained in my former room, I was still hurt. Mom never lit up around me, but she did around them. I received the task that required me to go across the nation 6 months ago. Mom volunteered to help rent out my apartment before she left. She said over coffee that it might earn some more cash while you're away. No thanks, I firmly said. Strangers shouldn't reside there. Mom nodded while pressing her lips together. I'll watch it for you, though. The spare key you provided me last year is still with me. Although lonely life in the staff housing was tolerable, every week I would phone Grandma Evelyn and we would talk about everything and nothing. The call last Thursday was a game changer. Claire. The sound of Grandma's voice had changed, hesitant, tighter. I don't like to spread rumors, but your building is home to Margaret Henderson from my bridge group. She also made a comment that worried me. My stomach grew constricted. How about my apartment? One more pause. March claims that soon after your departure, Jessica and her family moved in. She says they moved in with the help of Richard and your mother. I was hit like ice water by the betrayal. I said, that can't be right. However, I knew it was exactly what my mother would do, even as I was saying it. I apologize, dear. I believed you ought to be aware. I immediately called my mother after hanging up, making my guys remain casual. Hello, Mother. I wanted to check in. Is my apartment in good condition? Yes, indeed. It's all right, she replied too hastily. How are things at work? Fantastic. In fact, I need a place to stay for an old college acquaintance. She might be able to use my apartment, I told her. She'll come over and ask you for the key. Her voice was instantly filled with terror. I don't think that's a good idea, Claire. You've always maintained that you don't want outsiders in your home. Something could be harmed. And Mom, you're really picky about your belongings? I interrupted her, losing patience. I am aware that Jessica resides in my flat with her family. Everything was reinforced by the quiet. Claire. At last she sighed and said, Indeed, it's accurate. There was nowhere else for them to go, though. Due to the housing market, their landlord sold their building. This was done behind my back. I cut you off. I didn't want anyone to stay there, as you were aware. Jessica doesn't exist. Mom lost her temper. She is a member of the family. She is the daughter of Richard. To me, she is nothing. Claire, don't act like a child. This is only a temporary situation. The apartment isn't even being used by you at the moment. Today, I want them out. Additionally, I want you to give Grandma my extra key. Mom's voice grew stern. Jessica will remain for as long as necessary. In any case, you don't need the place just yet. I live in that apartment. I have to leave, Mom. She hung up after saying that icily. She didn't pick up when I called her back right away. Jessica's number went directly to voicemail when I tried it. With every step, my anger grew as I paced my small staff apartment. After paying utilities for 6 months in an apartment I wasn't using, I discovered that my mother had secretly moved in with her stepfamily. I picked up my phone once more and dialed Frank, my supervisor. "Claire is here. I have to go back to the home office and ask for a transfer. A family emergency has arisen?" Frank made no inquiries. I demonstrated myself important enough that he gave his approval within an hour when I told him I had to go home. The flight home seemed to go on forever. My rage grew with each passing minute. I had mentally practiced a dozen various confrontations by the time we touched down, and none of them had turned out well. After picking up my bag from the carousel, I took a taxi directly to Grandma Evelyn's residence. When she answered the door, a grin came on her face, but it was soon replaced with worry. "I didn't think you'd return so quickly, Claire." She drew me into an embrace. Her familiar aroma of coffee and lavender was immediately reassuring. "After what you told me, I was unable to go. I left my bag in her front door. I must examine the damage they have done to my place." She demanded that I prepare us some tea first. While she busied herself in the kitchen, "You appear worn out." I informed my boss over the phone that I had made it safely. After that, I saw Grandma's effective movement around the tiny room while I sat at her kitchen table. "Since you called me, have you talked to your mother?" I inquired. Grandma gave a headshake. "Since your father abandoned Margaret, we haven't spoken to each other." With a steaming mug before me, she spoke. "However, yesterday I did pass your building on my way. Both your car and theirs were present. My vehicle I almost suffocated on my tea. I left that one in my mother's garage." Grandma gave a somber nod. "I parked directly in front of your structure. It's obvious that they're using it without your consent." I was furious at the idea of them taking my belongings, my flat, and my automobile without my consent. I drained my cup and got to my feet. "I'm heading there to get to my apartment building. A refurbished warehouse with big windows and exposed brick. I took a taxi. When my father first showed me the property, I fell in love. I felt alienated now, standing outside of it. I rode the elevator to the 3rd floor and went to apartment 307 via the well-known hallway. My flat. I inhaled deeply before rapping firmly on the door. Quiet. I knocked again more loudly. Nothing has changed, but I thought I heard something moving within. At last I took out my keys and attempted to open the door, but the key refused to turn. Someone had replaced the lock. As I hammered on the door once again, I mumbled, "You must be kidding me." "You're in there, I know that. I live in this apartment." I knocked for 5 more minutes and got no answer, so I gave up and hurried back out onto the street. To get me to Mom and Richard's house, I called a cab. Their suburban house was just as it had been 6 months prior. Pristine hedges and a lawn. Still remaining in the backyard is the swing set Richard made for Ethan. After giving the driver his money, I strode to the front door and rang the bell more forcefully than was necessary. The door was opened by Mom. Her expression changed from one of surprise to one of hardness when she noticed me. Behind her, Richard emerged. He folded his arms across his chest. Mom stated bluntly, "Claire, why are you here?" I was astounded by the nonchalant disregard in her tone. "Why am I here? I reside in the apartment you gave away without my consent here in this city." Mom said, "You ought to have remained where you were. Everything was going well." "For whom is it fine?" I insisted. Someone changed the locks on my flat as I tried to enter. Richard moved forward. "You don't need that place as much as Jessica and Mark need." "Claire, they have kids. You are only one individual." I gaped at him in shock. "It's not their apartment, though. I own it." "You left it vacant and Dad left it to me," Mom retorted. Jessica's residence was lost. Were we to allow them to live on the streets? I may have been asked where. Allowed them to remain here or assisted them in finding another location. Richard's expression grew gloomy. "This is not a place for us. Furthermore, Jessica is more deserving of that apartment than you are. She needs to provide for her family." "What about my vehicle?" Recalling what my grandmother had told me, I inquired. "Before I moved, I left that one in your garage." Richard gave a shrug. "We handed it to Jessica. She needed to take the kids somewhere because her car broke down." I looked at my mother in the hopes of seeing some understanding or regret, but her face remained expressionless. "Your apartment belongings are in our garage," she added. "Now is the time to take them. They're blocking the path." "Getting in the way like I've always been correct," I repeated in a hollow voice. Mom winced but remained silent. As I waited for the van to arrive, I pulled out my phone and said, "I'll get a moving van." When the vehicle eventually arrived, I stood clumsily in their driveway and declined my mother's hesitant offer to wait inside. I led the movers to the garage where my furniture and boxes had been heaped carelessly. "Where should I miss it?" the head mover inquired. As the movers packed my life into the van, I told him the address of my grandmother. After school, Ethan got home. When he spotted me, his face brightened. "Claire!" Mom slashed his arm as he ran at me. "Enter the house and begin your homework. According to her, Claire is rather busy." Although his expression dimmed, he complied and gave me a confused look before vanishing into the home. I turned to my mother after loading the final box. "When I reclaim my place, what will you do since I will?" "Claire, don't cause trouble," she cautioned. At this point, Jessica has nowhere else to go. As we drove off, I said, "That's not my problem," and climbed into the moving van's passenger seat. I saw my mother standing at the doorway observing. Her face was unreadable. We unloaded everything into Grandma's garage at her house. Grandma wrapped her arm across my shoulders as the movers departed. "Now what?" quietly she asked. I examined the crates that held my life, everything my father left me. To create space for Jessica and her family, all of the experiences and memories were packed away. "Tomorrow I'll sort it out." "I just need to sleep right now," I said. I decided that night as I was laying in Grandma's guest room. They assumed that, like I had done with so many other injustices over the years, I would simply lay over and accept this. Not this time, though. I was determined to fight back this time. The following morning, I got up early and was determined to succeed. I took a brief shower and had breakfast with my grandmother before using my laptop to study property rights and tenant rules at her kitchen table. "What is the strategy?" Grandma refilled my coffee cup and asked. I shut off my laptop and said, "I'm going to the police." In my apartment, Jessica and her family are squatters. My car is being used by them without my consent. That must be against the law. I described my predicament to the local police station over the phone. My call was answered by a compassionate officer who advised me to come in and make a formal complaint. After giving Grandma a cheek kiss, I left. I met Officer Martinez, a kind-eyed, no-nonsense woman at the station. I fortunately had my ID, apartment deed, and auto title saved in my cloud account, so I showed these to her. As she entered notes into her computer, she nodded. "It is obvious that your property is being used without permission. We'll help with the eviction and accompany you to the property." I felt a wave of relief. "How quickly can we complete this? I am able to assign officers to accompany you today. I'll set it up in an hour." I drank awful coffee from the station vending machine and called my boss to give him an update on the situation during that hour. Officer Martinez followed through on her promise and brought back another Officer Richards who was tall. "Are you ready?" she inquired. Since my car was still in Jessica's possession, we drove separately. I wrote in a taxi and we met outside my apartment complex. We went to the third floor using the elevator. My chest was thumping with my heart. Officer Martinez rapped loudly on the door of my flat. "Please open the door, police." I heard shuffling inside after a long time. Then the voice of a man. Jessica's husband, Mark, yelled, "What's going on here? Please open the door, sir." Officer Richards gave a forceful response. Mark's face emerged as the door broke open, his eyes enlarging upon seeing me standing between the officers. "Claire, what the devil?" He lost his temper. "Sir, please open the door all the way." Officer Martinez gave the order. Mark opened the door grudgingly. With one child perched on her hip and the other peering out from under her legs, Jessica stood in my living room behind him. The apartment. Their stuff was all over my apartment. The floor was covered in toys. The walls, which had been a gentle gray, were now painted a brilliant yellow, and part of my furniture had been replaced by unfamiliar pieces. Jessica responded icily, "Claire, you need to have made the initial call, called to enter the flat where you unlawfully reside." I was so angry that I couldn't control myself. Officer Martinez came forward. "Ma'am, Miss Wilson is the rightful owner of this unit. Without her consent, you are inhabiting it." Jessica's cheeks turned red. "We were given permission by her mother. There is nowhere else for us to go. We have kids." For emphasis, she bounced the toddler on her hip. "Legally, that is insufficient." Officer Richards clarified that approval for permanent inhabitants may only be given by the property owner. "This is absurd," Mark spoke up. "It's been months since we moved in. We've improved. Enhancements I never requested or authorized." Gazing at the bright yellow walls, I retorted. Officer Martinez spoke sternly to Mark and Jessica. "You must leave these premises right away. The legal owner, Miss Wilson, has not given her permission for you to live here." "How about our employees?" Jessica insisted. "We cannot simply abandon everything. Officer Richards advised you to pack the necessities right away and make plans to remove the remainder in a day." Jessica's expression fell flat. Her eyes were filled with tears. "We have 2 children. What are we meant to do? She faced me. How can you treat relatives like this? Something fierce was sparked inside me by her words. Family. Jessica, you were never my family. My mother's attention was just diverted by you. My automobile, my apartment, and my bedroom. I've had enough of you. When Jessica began sobbing aloud, both of her kids became agitated. Like your father, you have no heart. You have no right to discuss my father. My voice was dangerously quiet as I spoke. Now gather your belongings, leave my car keys on the counter, and leave my place. Mark wrapped Jessica in his arm. Hurry up. Jess, let's just go to your dad's and acquire what we need. We'll work it out. As kids crammed toys and clothing into luggage, I observed from the doorway. Jessica is giving me angry glances in between sobbing. In order to prevent any harm to my belongings during their hurried packing, the cops stayed inside. They were prepared to go an hour later. Without a word, Jessica strode by me, her kids following in her wake. With a clatter, Mark dropped my car keys on the counter. We replaced the broken dishwasher, fixed the leaking bathroom faucet, and painted the place, he added sourly. You're welcome. The officers inquired whether I wanted to file charges for the illegal usage of my car after they had left. No, I answered after giving it some thought. All I want is my life to return. After they departed, they nodded and gave me some documents to sign attesting to the fact that I had reclaimed my property. I took a leisurely stroll around my apartment, observing all the alterations. In addition to the yellow walls, they had completely reconfigured the kitchen, turned my home office into a children's bedroom, and replaced my cozy couch with a brightly colored flowery one. I saw a single word scrawled in red lipstick on the mirror as soon as I walked into the bathroom. A bastard. Behind the sloppy letters, I gazed at my reflection. I may have sobbed 6 months ago. Perhaps I felt bad about uprooting Jessica and her family. All I felt now, though, was a chilly resolve. I took a paper towel, soaked it, and started to remove the lipstick. After cleaning the mirror, I went to the window in the living room and gazed out at the street. I observed Mark packing their final set of bags into their vehicle. Not my car. It was still parked close by, but another car that may have been Richard's or Mom's. As they drove away, Jessica sat in the passenger seat, her face puffy and red from crying. A burden was lifted from my shoulders. The days that followed were filled with a lot of activity. I made arrangements for my possessions to be transported back from Grandma's garage, engaged a locksmith to change all the locks, and hired a cleaning service. The first barriers to fall were the yellow ones. Priming and repainting them back to the soft gray took me my entire day. I enjoyed my job. My phone was ringing all the time. On the first day, Mom called at least a dozen times, followed by Richard. Then Jessica, too. I choose to ignore them all in favor of taking back my personal space and my sanity. I didn't answer till Grandma called. Your mother is hosting Jessica and her family. During one of our talks, she told me. Margaret called me furiously, but I didn't answer. I said, good for you, holding a paint roller while balancing on a ladder. I'm nearly finished cleaning my place of any evidence of them. 3 days following the eviction. My phone rang once more while I was putting my books back on the shelves. Mom was the one. I answered against my better judgment. What are you looking for? Without making an effort to be polite, I inquired. How could you harm your sister in this way? She threw herself and those defenseless kids out onto the street and demanded in a high-pitched scream. I put the book down that I was holding. Jessica is not my sister to start. Secondly, no one was thrown onto the street by me. What should have happened in the first place is that they are staying with you. They can't be here for very long. There isn't enough room in this house for everyone. Mom, that's not my problem. Perhaps you ought to have considered that before granting them my residence without my consent. She spat. You're being self-centered. You don't need that place as much as Jessica does. Grandma Evelyn will soon pass away. After that, you will also inherit her home. Giving Jessica and her family your apartment would be simple. Was it the purpose of this? My question was hardly audible above a whisper. Do you believe I will inherit too much? So without my permission, you chose to disperse my property. Claire, don't be so emotional. Here we're discussing family. No, Mom, we're discussing the property I inherited from my father. Just so you know, it's not your business what Grandma does with her house. After a little silence, Mom's voice became abruptly conciliatory. See, Claire, perhaps we started off in the wrong direction. How about we have supper together tonight? We can talk about this like grown-ups. You are missed by Ethan. My heart ached at the thought of my little brother, but I forced myself to be strong. We had a conversation before you gave away my car and apartment. Claire, I'm done talking about this. I'm also done with you. Before I could stop myself, the words poured out of my mouth. Don't give me another call. Stay away from my apartment. We're done. Mom responded. You don't mean that. But her tone faltered. I do tell Ethan that I love him and that he can get in touch with me if he wants to when he's older. But Richard, you're no longer my family, Jessica. Before she could reply, I hung up and blocked her number as well as Richard's and Jessica's. After that, I sobbed while sitting on my freshly repaired couch. For the years I'd tried to make them work, not for the relationships I was ending. Peering through the crowds, I heard someone knocking on my door the following morning. Frank, my supervisor, startled me by showing up. When I opened the door, he remarked, "Good morning. I wanted to check in with you. Would it be okay if I brought in a fresh pot?" Frank roamed my living room. Nice location. A lot better than the closet you were in. Westward. Despite myself, I grinned. Regards. Was it over coffee with my dad? I told him everything. The latest apartment drama, Dad's death, Mom's remarriage, and the divorce. His expression did not change as he listened. Thoughtful. When I was done, he said, "Are you prepared to return to your job?" "You have been missed in the home office." "Yes, in fact. I require the diversion." Frank gave a nod. "Excellent. I believe you would be ideal for this assignment." Monday is the first day. I contacted Grandma and invited her to dinner after he departed. I informed her about my talk with Mom while we were eating. I confessed that I cut her off entirely. Perhaps that makes me a bad person. Grandma clasped my hand as she reached across the table. You develop boundaries as a result, something your mother never valued. Your dad would be sympathetic. But I feel sorry for Ethan. When he's older, he'll comprehend. Grandma showed me. And it is up to him to decide whether he doesn't. Months went by. I immersed myself into my work-spent weekends with my grandmother and completely renovated my apartment. She informed me that Jessica had located a rental apartment with her family, after spending a few weeks with Mom and Richard. I was relieved that the chapter was finally over, but I didn't feel satisfied by this news. I was eating breakfast at my favorite cafe one Saturday morning in the early fall when someone slid into the chair across from me. Ethan was the one. He threw his knapsack over one shoulder. "Hello, Claire," he said warily. I blinked, startled. "How did you discover me?" He gave a shrug. "You used to come here a lot," Mom said. "For 3 weeks I have been checking on Saturdays. Is Mom aware of your presence?" He gave a headshake. "I'm at soccer practice, she believes. I told you not to lie to her," even though his determination to see me thrilled my heart. He answered, "You mentioned that I could get in touch when I'm older." I'm currently 9.5. It's older. Correct, I couldn't contain my laughter. I suppose it is. Do you want some hot chocolate? Ethan was talking about school and friends while we sat together. Something inside of me started to mend. Maybe, just maybe, I could still be a sister to this intelligent boy who had sought me out in spite of everything, even though I didn't need Mom, Richard, or Jessica in my life. "Can I visit you again on Saturday of next week?" As we separated, he inquired. I gave a nod. "I'll be present. Same table, same time." Family came to mind as I watched him dash out to catch his bus. It's the one you choose to create, not the one you're born into or compelled to accept. Even though it was just little Ethan, Grandma, Evelyn, and me, mine was genuine. It was sufficient.